Hey everybody, Casey Cease here with Lucid Books. I'm here with one of our authors, Jared Wilson. Now, as gruff and tough as this man might look, he is actually quite a talented children's book author. And he's a recent author of Tom Danger and the Ice Snake. He is married to his wife for 17 years. They have 5 children with the 6th on the way. And so as you get to know Jared a little bit, you'll be able to see that while he might have a gruff exterior like myself, I had this overbearing eyebrow bone, but he's actually a man who loves kids and would love to share a little bit about that. So in addition to those things, Jared, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I grew up in Long Beach, California. I don't know, nothing very interesting to say about that. Grew up doing hip hop, actually. That was my big thing. I used to rap back in the day, and met my wife, and she hated rap, which is funny. Neither one of us grew up in a Christian home, so we did not know anything really about Christ, you know. Things we had heard here and there, you know, you visit church on holidays and that kind of thing. I got saved when I was 21. We've actually been together 17 years, but we've been married for 12. So okay. What happened there, and I'll just keep this brief, is that pretty much we met each other, we moved in with each other, we had a kid. God saved me, God saved her. We split up from one another, moved out, got back together, got engaged, got married, then moved back in with one another, and now we have a long string of kids from that. So God literally, we were doing everything wrong. God put a stop to it and made us do it his way, and it's been a beautiful.
That's awesome. So help me connect the dots a little bit.
That's probably, yeah.
No, that's great. I love it. I love hearing stories of transformation. And I know many people who watch these things love getting to know personally the authors and their testimony and story behind it. So from that story, how did we get to Tom Danger and the Ice Snake? What compelled you to write this book?
So, I mean, I love comic books. You know, I got my Punisher jacket on, and I love, you know, sci-fi, fantasy, all that stuff since I was a little kid. I used to make my own comic books, and of course, children were boys. And one night they asked me for a bedtime story, and I just make up this guy, Tom Danger, right? And I try to come up with the most 80s name I could possibly think of.
It is so 80s, you know, man. I love it.
Right? It's just like MacGyver, you know, or something like. So it's just like, it's Tom Danger. And of course it was little boys. So I'm going, okay, what do little boys want to hear? Okay, so he wrestles Yetis, and he beats up dragons, and he travels to other worlds, and he does all these crazy things. And he's done a lot of things in the stories that I've told at home with my kids that due to copyright laws will never get to actually write down. Anyways, I was just telling these stories for years to them. And there's Tom baby stories when he was a baby, and he always manages to creep out of the house without the parents knowing and get into trouble. And anyway, eventually my wife goes, well, why don't you? Well, actually, she gave me homework. She didn't say, why don't you? She said, I want you to write me a Tom Danger story. A story that I'd spent a long time working on. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. She goes, I want you to write a Tom Danger story for me. And I want it by Christmas. And I'm going, okay. So I wrote the rough draft, and I had it in her Christmas stocking. That was her Christmas present. And spent some time. That was December 2017. So I spent some time in 2018 kind of retooling it and just making it look a little better. And around that time, my pastor and good friend, Charlie Garrison, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to send it to them on a whim, see what happens. If they like it, cool. If not, it's all right, you know. And sent it to you guys, and you know, the response was, yeah, we'd love to publish this. I'm going, okay.
We love Charlie, and his heart, and his book Epic has been really well received. And so, yeah, I remember him reaching out about you and saying, hey, I got this guy who writes children's books and like kind of a comic feel. And I was like, oh, geez. Because, you have some people that, especially pastors, you know, I've been in the ministry over 20 years. And, you know, you have people who are like, Pastor, can you help me do this? And you're like, oh, I sure want to help you. But, you know, there's grace and there's truth, how much truth we need to give. But we were actually very pleasantly surprised that, and knowing Charlie, I mean, Charlie is more of the truth edged guy at times. And so he would probably tell you
Charlie
if it's trash.
Charlie shoots straight, you know.
He does. He's a great guy. So, okay, so you send it to us, you get it going. You write and publish this book. The illustrations are great. Andrew, the illustrator, did a wonderful job with you. So what are you hoping that the reader's going to experience as they're reading this book?
You know, I love C.S. Lewis. He's my favorite writer. I've read, gosh, over 30 of his books. I've read a ton of them repeatedly. So anyways, you know, I remember C.S. Lewis reading about, he was talking about George MacDonald. And George MacDonald was his first taste of holiness in a book. There was this and he wasn't even a Christian yet when he had read it, this book by George MacDonald. But there was this otherness to it, you know, that had appealed to him. And he remembers that as like his first taste, you know. I am definitely not C.S. Lewis, but if I can be that for somebody, that would be really cool. And I mean, there's a lot of things that are not as lofty as that. I mean, just giving a child the chance to go on this huge imaginative ride. I would love to be able to do that. And even on another level, and just showing biblical manhood in our culture. Tom he's tough, he's strong, but as you'll see in later stories, Lord willing, he knows how to empathize and cry as well. And he knows how to be there for people, you know. I always talk to my sons. I do have 5, so only one daughter. You know, I tell my sons all the time, you know, there's a time to turn the tables over like Christ, and there's also a time to hug somebody like Christ. So, you know, it's about gauging that and knowing as a man, how do we approach this situation? And so as a man, it's important to know that all of those feelings are valid, and that, and to also have the wisdom to know which feeling, or rather, which action to approach with in any given situation. And so, you know, with Tom, I had the opportunity to put him in fun situations, in harder situations, and situations that cause him to empathize with others. I'm not glorifying violence in any way. I'm just saying this is a reality that sometimes as a man, we pick up the sword, and sometimes as a man, we wrap arms around you, you know?
That's great. So what kind of feedback have you received from your book so far?
I've gotten a lot of really cool stuff. There's a young lady who she wants a stuffed ice snake. I've no real idea how to make that happen for her, but she loved the ice snake. I think the coolest thing for me, though, is just my own kids going, "This is awesome, Dad, I love this." You know, I think at the end of the day, like if Tom never sold anything and it was only the one book, something that I created for them is in a physical form, and they can have that for the rest of their life. And the fact that they love that and are pleased with that, that means a lot to me. And my oldest son goes, "Dad, that's how I've always seen him in my head." And I went, it's perfect. Perfect. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you have sold some. And so it's not just a keepsake for your kids. You know, I appreciate the sentiment, because what you're saying is the value ultimately is in the legacy. And it's one of the ways that you have shown affection not only for Christ, but also for your children by putting this together. But the beauty is, that's why I love publishing books, is it helps multiply the story or the message for other people to enjoy it as well. So what profession besides your current one would you like to try?
This is completely cliche, of course, but acting, and probably theater specifically.
Well, I mean, you're a rapper, so I mean,
right.
You probably got some chops.
Right. Well, I used to do theater too. I always tell my wife, I'm like, you know, when I'm older and it's just kind of me and you hanging out, I think I'm going to go audition for some plays, you know, just for me, you know. I loved theater. Just the all of it, you know, mentally having to be prepared and all that. And of course, with rapping, you know, you get on stage and it's just you and the crowd. And if your lines aren't memorized, there's going to be a problem, you know, and just the thrill of that. A lot of guys who love sports, the thrill of getting on the field. Well, that's the way I felt stepping on stage. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
So what are you not very good at besides sports?
Math.
Yeah. One of my daughters says she's not very good at math. I said, "Baby, as long as you hire a great CPA, you'll be fine. So it's going to be all right."
Right.
So, so are you planning on writing another book, or?
Yeah, we've written rough drafts for 3.5 more Tom stories.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've already written 3.5 more. The second one will be Tom Danger and the Fuller Honey. And he has to enter a Yeti wrestling competition to earn a 32-ounce pot of honey for his good friend, Dr. Ross, who is a grizzly bear with a top hat and a monocle. And the kids really love Dr. Ross. So I'll kind of keep a lid on the other two.
That's fine.
I'm really excited about those, but they kind of take Tom into a not darker. I don't think darker is the right word, but definitely more adventurous. My plan is to show Tom in all kinds of situations of life. Some books will be sad, some will be hilarious. I hope, because I definitely have ideas that bring him back to the more silly, storytelling. So, yeah. And then I am also working on my daughter has a bedtime story. And so I'm actually writing a Princess Gwen story right now so that if Tom does well enough, I will move forward with Princess Gwen as well.
I could see some of these becoming children's animations or, some cartoons or things like that. I mean, I think there could be a lot of run with your book. Kind of reminds me as a kid, one of my favorite books was Berenstain Bears. And I remember when they started making some cartoons based on those stories, I remember just loving seeing it come to life. And then it kind of helped me develop my inner critic a bit because at times I thought they did it wrong, their interpretation, right? Because, as a child, when you're listening to a children's book, you have, especially with characters you love, you have your idea of how it's supposed to go. And then if they do it incorrectly, then it's frustrating. So right. I can definitely see that. So let me ask you this. What are some ways that you can serve people or organizations? Let's say someone's wanting you to come out and share with them. What are some things that you feel like you could bring to the table?
So
besides rapping and acting.
Right. So I met my dad when I was 21.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And most of the guys that I grew up with either didn't know their dads or their dads weren't very close to them. So I grew up around a bunch of fatherless sons, and we're all latchkey kids because moms aren't around because they're working 2 jobs or long hours or that kind of thing. So we're all getting in trouble. And just manhood is very important to me. And so if I had the opportunity to speak at a church or that kind of thing, having the opportunity to speak to young men about what it means to be a godly man, that's one of the reasons that I would love to keep for Tom to be successful is to have a biblical portrayal of manhood in the public sphere, and so I think the best way I could serve is probably just talking to young guys about what it means to be a man, using my own examples, of course, my own failures, that is, perhaps triumphs as well. So just thinking about how God has taken me from this lost kid to a loving husband and a loving father. And so knowing both sides of the fence, and knowing what the Bible calls men to be and my own struggles with that, I think I could be a benefit to guys my own age who are struggling, to young men who may not have that example at home to tell them what's expected of them, which can be hard to hear. But I think young men want to be challenged. And unfortunately, our culture does not specialize in challenging young men anymore. So having somebody saying, hey, it's good to man up. It's good to do hard things, and having the opportunity to speak to them. I think that's the best way I could probably serve that I can think of,
Awesome, man. Yeah. So if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
I've had this discussion with my kids so many times. I love flying. Like just the thought of being absolutely free with nothing holding me back. Like that's the best,
I like that because of traffic,
right?
It's like, I'm done with traffic, bro. I mean, I moved outside of Houston and there's less traffic, but even now when like 4 or 5 cars back up, I'm like, what's happening here? There's too many people here. So flight would be amazing. I've often fantasized of a helicopter or something to get around traffic, but those are pretty expensive and book publishing doesn't really warrant helicopters. So we're gonna have to pass on that. So let's end up with this. Yeah. Who is your favorite comic book character?
So Green Lantern, but that's a blanket statement if you're not familiar, or rather if you are familiar with comics, because there's a bunch of Green Lanterns. So my favorite character specifically is Hal Jordan.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so he is always like exemplified what hero is. You know, he makes the tough choices. He does the crazy things that need to get done. It's just a cool guy, you know, and I think I see a lot of myself in him because he's not perfect. He's very troubled and he makes mistakes, but he loves hard and he tries to do good. And like, yeah, I like this guy. You know, it's almost like Superman's Paul and Green Lantern is Peter. And you're like, you know, Paul is definitely the guy that you should aspire to be. But Peter's probably the one you more relate to.
Right. Yep. So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So, hey, how can people connect with you online and where can they find your books?
So they can find the way to connect with me online, Tom Danger Adventures through Instagram, Tom Danger Adventures through Facebook, Tom Danger Adventures through Twitter. You could connect with my author page on Amazon. Amazon is also how you can find the book. Barnes & Noble, Target, all of these online. Lucid Books, of course. You can go to Lucid Books website and look for the book there. And my email, tomdangeradventures@gmail.com. We love feedback. We'd love to hear from people. And you know, if anybody wants to book me or anything like that, I'd love to come speak. That would be great as well. So please feel free to reach out.
Well, Jared Wilson, thanks so much for visiting with me, and we're super excited about Tom Danger and the Ice Snake and the upcoming future editions of Tom Danger. So thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.